Hi everyone, welcome to Sunya IS. In this session, we will discuss the post-war scenario. We are discussing the part of the First World War and the after effects on India. So I hope guys I'm live and audible and visible to you clearly. If it is working fine, please comment and let me know how is it going. Fine? Am I audible and visible to you? Yes. Good evening guys. Good evening everyone. I hope you celebrated your holidays and the festival nicely. Now, in today's session, let me just cover it up from the last class, a quick recap for you. As you remember, we discussed something about the First World War, in which we discussed the situation related to the Turkey, right? And I discussed the part of Khilafat movement with you. However, I just gave you a brief introduction. But now, in today's class, what we will do, we will see that after defeating Germany, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, this particular party, after defeating it, how Britain led to different policies. Okay, and now we will see that this particular period will saw the maturing of Indian nationalism. What do you mean by maturing here? First of all, people got a lot of awareness now, and we understood that how the war happens and why this world war was happening. It was just to control the resources, just to get more and more power, right? So it somehow made us clear about the intentions of Britishers. And now we understood that we need to have a proper plan. If we want Britishers to be defeated, if we want them to go out of India, if we want Britishers to quit India, then there needs to be a perfect strategy. And now, as already a base was prepared, so extremists led the movement very well, and you will see that revolutionaries also started doing things in a different approach. And the entry of Gandhiji will be a signifying event. It will bring a golden movement in the movement of the freedom struggle for India. So we'll see the arrival of Gandhi and the foundation which was created before him. Now, in India, we started discussion on home rule leagues. Okay, we had two home rule leagues. Home rule is all about self rule or Swaraj. Okay, so we are more firm about Swaraj now. I hope you understood about Swaraj. In case you have any doubts, you can discuss that with me before I start. I can see one question by Neha. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, Neha. I have some doubt. First, did the Britishers force Ranjit Singh to surrender? And ma'am, please explain the moderates and extremists view. Yes. Let me just come to it, Neha. First of all, yes, they used to do it. And somehow, see, basically, it is all about their pressure policies only. But they used to follow everything in a formidable manner. They never used to do things in a verbal language. Okay, they had their own official format to be followed. So they used to follow things as a paperwork. Yes, they used to, ask everything to do something. And what you read in books or what we discuss today, it is something which is just 1% of that Indian movement. Okay. Now you need to understand that there are so many datas and informations not discussed and shared with the books. So you don't read them in reality. They used to pressurize for everything. Okay, and if we talk about the views, extremists always used to hate Britishers. So whenever they saw that a leader is getting suppressed or oppressed, they had to follow extra constitutional method, and they wanted masses to be involved and to be informed about it. But moderates never wanted it to be so. And that's why the clash was there between moderates and extremists. Right? I hope you understood the clash. And that's why the Surat split happened. But we will see later, moderates will also understand that extremists are really nice and fine about their approach, and they both will come together. These two parts will come together, and somehow they will create a good balance, a balance between the moderates and extremists. Okay, and you'll see that balance now. Don't worry. If you have any other doubts, please let me know. If even if you don't have any doubts, you just need to revise things which we have discussed, and then you'll surely get a doubt. Okay, if you will study, you will have doubts. Otherwise, there is no point of discussing things live. Now, come to the topic again. Home Rule League movement we are discussing. What is the meaning of Home Rule League? Self-government or self-rule, where Indians are saying that if we talk about government, government is about three things, right? Like today you understand that there are three organs of the government: legislature, executives, and judiciary, right? We already had Indian judges. We already understood that Indians can come and participate in the legislative and executive structure, but it was not up to the mark. Fine. So now Indians demanded that more Indians should be included and they should get more higher posts in the legislative assemblies and the executive assemblies. Even Indian judges should be treated equally as a European judge. So equal demands and more participations of Indians in the administration in different government machineries, it was demanded. By doing these things, what will happen? First of all, we will learn the real way of parliamentary functionaries, and after learning what Indians can do, they can have powers transferred in their own hand. So there would be a transfer of power, because until this particular time, you will see that Britishers had more powers and they knew how to run the government. So we are saying, okay, you are good and you have a good governance skill and experience with you. What we want us to be included in your party, and we will just learn from you. After you feel that we learned something and we are capable enough to run the government now, then you can transfer the powers. After the powers are transferred, then we will have our own self rule. So this rule is again under the control of Britishers. That's why it's not complete independence. As I told you that it's a step by step gradual process. We could not ask for complete independence directly. We could not ask them to quit India completely and go outside. Okay. So we are following a step by step approach. So that's why at that time we understood that we are colonized and we have some problems here. We don't have all the rights. Britishers had better army. So after realizing all these facts, we started following a step by step approach, and Indians demanded more power in the governance and more authority in the governance, that is self rule. But in the self rule, when most important powers and things are under the control of Britishers, they will only guide. So, a British supremacy or a British suzerainty will always be there. To understand it, you can link it with the medieval Indian history where Akbar used to rule. So, in the medieval times, when you talk about the Mughal history, there Akbar he did something with Rajputs and so many other regional kingdoms. He said that you can have your own mansabdari or the local authority in your own area and you can rule at your own place. But understand that you are under a Mughal suzerainty. So you cannot challenge the Mughals. In case you do so, then you will lose the mansabdari and then it will lead to a battle. So in this way, Akbar maintained a friendly relations. Similarly, here we are saying that okay, Britishers are supreme and they can have the power. They had colonized India, so okay, we accept it now. But what we want that at our own, governance level in the local areas or at the national level also, Indians should be participating more and more and they should get more powers. But don't worry, we will not go against the British suzerainty. So now, to get this self rule, two home rule leagues came. One was Bal Gangadhar Tilak. By Bal Gangadhar Tilak, it was more consolidated and strong. But second was by Annie Besant. Annie Besant, she had a home rule league and her own, organization was scattered more. It was not that strong. Okay, but she also did a lot of work in the part of South India, especially. Now, we had few other leaders like G.S. Kharpade, Sir Subramaniam Iyer, Joseph Baptista, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. These leaders also demanded home rule. Okay, so they are more important leaders, they are the prominent leaders. Now they got together and decided that it was necessary to have a national alliance so that they all can come together and demand anything unanimously together, okay, with a single sound. So that would work throughout the year, unlike the Congress, because Congress used to meet annually and every time in a different place. Okay, only annual meetings were there. So they were not able to meet and continue the policies on day-to-day basis. It was working very, very slow. So self-government or home rule for all of India within the British Commonwealth was demanded. British Commonwealth is a common platform where all the other colonies could meet together and have their own party, in which they could all have an organization, a platform to discuss things, to implement things, to have some policies. And India, by our own will, we are a part of this Commonwealth. So we even say that today we have the Commonwealth Games, right? So these games are very popular in the world. But now the scenario is not same. In the present situation, in the contemporary issues, this Commonwealth platform or the Commonwealth Games which you see, here you will see so many countries are there which got colonized by the Britishers. They are together here, but it is not to show any British suzerainty anymore. Okay, because these countries are democratic now, and with their own will, they have joined the Commonwealth and they are part of it just to maintain their international relations, you can say. Now, this alliance was to be the All India Home Rule League, along with the lines of Irish Home Rule League. Okay, so they wanted to follow the Irish style, the way Irish people got their home rule. Similarly, Indians wanted the same. But in the end, two home rule leagues were launched. Okay, one by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, more consolidated, and another by Annie Besant, scattered. Both had same aim. Okay, they wanted to begin a new trend of aggressive politics where they have a clear demand of self rule or Swaraj. Okay. Now, the question is why these two separate home rule leagues were there? Can you tell me why? Why these two separate home rule leagues were there? Why? Why they could not come together? Why Tilak and Annie Besant had issues, or what kind of problem was there? See, Annie Besant had no issues with Tilak. Actually, she had issues with Congress. Okay, so her demands and things were not accepted. She was not getting any response from the Congress, and that's why she started her own home rule league. Now, Tilak was ready to assume leadership after his release. He came back in the public in June 1914. If you remember, he was charged under sedition, right? So when he came back, he was very, very popular, but he understood that in case he follows anything aggressive against the government, he would be imprisoned and punished again. But he wanted to participate in politics. He wanted to remain in between the public area, and to have that domain, he just understood that he needs to work very smart. In case you understand that your enemy is very strong, and if you will do anything to kick that enemy back, you may have more punishments and fallouts. So to avoid it, you need to work very smart, where you can defeat the enemy by getting more and more strength. So Tilak now promised the government, the British government, that he would not be very extreme in his sense, and he will be there to assist people in the political awareness in a more milder way. So he had made a conciliatory gesture. okay, to the government. He assured it of his loyalty, and to the moderates that he wanted something like Irish Home Rule League owners or Irish Home Rule rulers, the self government, a reform of administration and not an overthrow of the government. So, this is a very important line here. It shows that when the Home Rule League was made and when the demands were laid, they were not asking Britishers to go or Britishers to quit India. They only wanted them to have some administrative reforms. Okay, they just wanted to have some transfer of powers. Now, Annie Besant, the Irish theosophist based in India since 1896, she was an Irish woman, theosophist, okay, and she decided to enlarge the sphere of her activities in India. She wanted to start a movement for home rule on the lines of the Irish Home Rule Leagues. So, here, when she came, she had her own way of, thinking and doing things, and it could not coordinate with the Congress at that time. So the leagues, both Tilak and Besant, they realized that the sanctions of a moderate dominated Congress was well, well required, as full cooperation of extremists was essential for the movement to succeed. They knew that if they want to continue this Home Rule League movement and if they want to get any kind of success, it is important that they get a good kind of permission from the moderate leaders, because moderates used to dominate the Congress, and the ways should not be challenged by extremist leaders also. It should be a very balanced approach. Now they started waiting for the sanction of moderates. Okay. Now, having failed at 1914 session of the Congress to reach a moderate extremist reapproachment, Tilak and Besant now decided to revive the political activity on their own, because they understood that there is no reapproachment and extremists and moderates are not coming together. By early 1915, Annie Besant had launched a campaign. Okay, in 1915, she started the demand of self-government of India after the war on the lines of white colonies. White colonies means other colonies, okay, other European colonies. Okay, so in other colonies like Canada and Australia, self rule was there. So they had more participation of their own people, and governance was more moderate, and transfer of power was very, very smooth at that particular point. So she campaigned through her newspaper, and the newspaper was New India. This you need to remember for prelims, very, very important. New India and Commonwealth, very, very important, as you know that they ask directly in prelims with these questions and options. And by her public meetings and conferences also, she used to get a lot of people assembled, and she was heard greatly. Okay, people understood that she is a very, very strong lady. And here, at the annual session of Congress in 1915, the efforts of Tilak and Besant met with some success. Okay, why? Because now it was decided that extremists and moderates could work together. It was the time when the World War scenario highlighted the problems of Britishers, that Britishers are not really good for the colonies. They just want more and more power, and they want to continue the exploitation. That's why the World War happened. So people understood the real intentions. It was decided that extremists would be admitted to the Congress again, and they will work together. Although Besant failed to get the Congress to approve her schemes of home rule leagues, Congress did commit itself to a program of educative propaganda and revival of local level Congress committees. So they wanted to revive their local Congress committees, and they wanted to educate people. Educate means politically educating people. Political education, civil education, and national education. A feeling of nationalism, a patriotic feeling should be highlighted more. So, not willing to wait for too long. Annie Besant, she had her own views. She was waiting for the response. When she got no response from the Congress, Besant laid the condition that if the Congress did not implement its commitments, she would be free to set up her own league, which she finally had to, as there was no response from the Congress. So she had her own separate league. If we talk about the Tilak's league, Tilak set up his Indian Home Rule League in April 1916. So this is a very important time. Tilak held his first Home Rule meeting at Belgaum. Okay, Belgaum. Pune was the headquarter of his league. So remember, Pune was the headquarter. If you remember, Peshwa also used to rule from Pune. Pune is very, very important. His league was restricted to Maharashtra, excluding Bombay city, because Bombay was with Annie Besant. Okay, Bombay was with Annie Besant. So he only had Maharashtra, Karnataka, central provinces, and Berar. Okay, it had 6 branches, and the demands included Swarajya, formation of linguistic states, and education in the vernacular languages, so that Indian local languages are there to be taught in the school. So, teaching and reading mediums were very, very important for him. He wanted to educate people and he wanted linguistic states. Here you can see that a demand of linguistic state coming after the independence of India was somehow had a foundation during the national struggle, right? Because Congress and a lot of time when they used to distribute their committees, Congress working committees, or when they had to demand something, they always used to talk about this linguistic state thing. It was a very popular thing, and it became more popular after independence because people asked for linguistic state and we got one, right? We got so many states. It was started with Andhra Pradesh, but states came like that. Now, Indian Home Rule League movement and Indian Home Rule League in 1917, you can see here few pictures related to it. Okay, here you can see this is a picture of Gadar party and this is the picture of Home Rule League. Now, Besant League was different from Tilak. Annie Besant set her All India Home Rule League in September 1916 in Madras, okay, which is now in Chennai. And she covered rest of India, including Bombay city. So you can see that the approach and the domain is bigger, right? It had 200 branches. How many branches Tilak had? Tilak only had how many branches? I told you. We just covered it. Yes, good evening, guys. Those of you who just joined the session, please like and share the video. And please answer in the comments. Tilak only had 6 branches. But here you can see that she had 200 branches. But it was loosely organized as compared to Tilak. Why? See, first of all, it's not easy to control so many branches and domains, right? She was not a local person of India, right? And she had more bigger domain, so of course it was not easy. For Tilak it was easier because he only had 6 branches. Okay, so they had George Arundale as the organizing secretary, and George Arundale is very, very important. Besides Arundale, the main work was done by B.W. Wadia and C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. So these two leaders are also very important for us. Now, if we talk about this Home Rule League program, the League campaign aimed to convey the common man the message of Home Rule as self-government. Because before we demand something from the government, it's very important that Indians also realize the demand and understand the motives. Because see, Indian people, if we talk about the masses, many of them were not educated enough. Okay, so sometimes they are uneducated, sometimes they are unaware, and were not that modern also. They were very traditional in their approach. So they lacked the sensibility to understand the political freedom. So it was very, very important, and it was more important than to, make Britishers get those demands confirmed. It was more important to first make Indians realize that what they were asking, the motives were not clear. So, to make it clear with the masses, they used to have different campaigns, activities, workshops. They used to organize different camps and assemblies where they had public meetings, and they used to discuss these ideas, that why we should get independence. First of all, if you want independence, you should know the meaning of independence, that what is the meaning, why it is important, what changes it will bring to your life. Once you are independent, then you will have your own government, you would be able to vote, you could decide for your own things, you will have more stability in the country, you will have more power with the country. So to get more power, more wealth, you need to be more aware. So they had to educate people first, they had to make people understand that this is important for you to get the freedom, because many of the people in India, they didn't realize the meaning and importance of the freedom, and many of them, they took it very lightly sometimes. So now by doing it, they had a clear message conveyed among the common masses or common men to understand the importance and the meaning. It carried a much wider appeal than the earlier mobilizations. So you will say that it was already done by the extremist leaders and so many other Congress leaders. So how they are different? See, they had a wider appeal. Now they started approaching people in a different way. First of all, they are very secular in their behavior. Okay, and they also attracted the politically backward regions. Okay, means they were not focusing only on a particular section or a religion or a class or a region. No, they used to focus on each and every area. They went to the backward regions of Gujarat, they went to the backward regions of Sindh, and they reached to many other villages and wanted to strengthen things locally. So they wanted more deep roots, so they had a deeper connection with the people with deeper roots. Okay, now by doing all these things, Indians understood that yes, they need independence and they had to get some self rule, they had to get some power and authority in the government. By that time, Russian Revolution of 1917 happened, which ended the monarchy in Russia. Basically, if you read the Russian Revolution, it is in two parts. Okay, starting from the February Revolution, ending with the October Revolution. So, in the February Revolution, people just wanted to remove the Tsar, and Tsar was the ruler. Okay, so to end the monarchy, people wanted to end the monarchy and have a parliamentary system of government where socialism could be there. But after removing the Tsar and after removing monarchy, ending it, and getting parliamentary system, people were not satisfied. So Bolshevik party with the leader Lenin started the October Revolution again. And in October, the Bolshevik party with their Bolshevik army overthrew the government and they started their own socialist party. And with that, they had a realistic approach towards socialism, and with 5 years planning they had a more centralized government. So it was there in Russia, and it inspired Indians also. Indians also followed a centralized planning, socialism, social culture, and by that time socialism became very popular in the world. Why? The reason is that a negativity came with the idea of capitalism. Even today you will see that capitalism sometimes is seen in a very negative sense, but it should not be like that. Why? Because see, it had its own pros and cons. But why capitalism became very negative? We are talking about the time after 19. 100. Okay. Why? Because see, it was somehow connected with colonialism. Okay, it was connected with colonialism. Why? Using capitalism to create colonialism is wrong. Capitalism is just a economic approach where market can have the economic rights, where everything is dependent on demand and supply circulation, and it is very good in its behavior when we talk about profit. So profit, price, power, so many importance for the talent and developments are linked with capitalism, which is very very important. But when it came with colonialism, because people who got the capitalist approach in Britain and other parts of Europe to get raw material and market to grow their capitalistic behavior, they started colonizing. And colonialism is very much equivalent to exploitation. So many of the countries in Asia, like India, they were exploited. So after getting exploited again and again with so many years, they had a negative approach towards capitalism. They thought that it is just because of rich people who are already owners, business owners. They misuse the labor. They somehow exploit their laborers. They do cost cutting to get more profit. And to get their profit, they are exploiting us. That's why it is wrong. We should not follow capitalism. We should follow socialism. Why? Because socialism is more welfare. It is more welfare oriented. Why? Because socialism is about government controlling the economy. When government controls the economy, government will take care of the basic needs, and there would be an equality. Okay, equality in the society and economy, so people will have a better life. But if we talk about this particular socialistic behavior, yes, people got their basic needs, but the lifestyle was very very dull and dark. People didn't realize that they had no standard of living. People even today, you see in India, when somebody studies nicely, and if they are coming from a good rich family, they want to leave India. They want to go somewhere out and they want to settle in Europe and America or somewhere else. Why? Why so many youngsters are leaving India? Why this brain drain is happening? Because they don't see any, importance or value for their talent. There is no value of ambitions and talents in India. Why youngsters are feeling like this? Because they have understood that if even if you look at on a painter, if a painter is having a painting and if he sells it in India in any of the marketplace in any area, that painter won't get more than 1000 rupees, maybe maximum 1 lakh. But that painting can have a worth of 10 lakh, 20 lakh, or 1 crore rupees in America, in Paris, in any other city like that. So that person will decide to go to that place where his talent is valued. Engineers, they get more salary if they join any American company or if they join any other multinational company. They get more salaries. Doctors are paid well. So to get good payment, if they want to be paid well, they had to go to a developed nation. And developed nations are more in the western part of the world. Why USA is dominating the world today? Because of capitalism and democracy. So you will see that so many people coming from the corporate class, they understand this, that in reality socialism is good. It sounds good, but in reality it gives you a very mediocre life. If you want to raise your standard of living, if you want to increase your profit, if you want to learn new things, if you want to be paid well, and if you want your ambitions and talents to be valued, then you need to go in a developed nation, and only capitalism will make you understand the real value, because they go for luxury, standard of living, demands, lifestyle, easiness in the society. However, socialism can only fulfill your basic needs, but you can't demand about the luxury without fulfilling the necessity. Necessity is more important, right? Once you take care of your necessities, then only you can talk about luxury, right? This is capitalism can give you luxury, okay? But socialism can focus on your necessities. So, Indians at that time, they had more basic problems. They were demanding their basic needs to be fulfilled because poverty was very, very high. And whenever the poverty is higher in a country, they will always follow socialism. People who are poor, they will only talk about basic needs. Go and meet and talk to a poor person, any person nearby you. Talk to a poor person, okay, and discuss what they want. They will say that we just want simple food, shelter, clothing. If we can get a good job, a secured job, then it would be great. It would be a life changing thing that we will have a good amount of, money in our hand, a fine salary, a regular payment is enough for us. We will be blessed enough to get this. This is their dream. Okay. They won't ask you that we want luxury cars, we want luxury houses, we want luxury clothes, we want big brands, big market, big advertisement, big profit, power. No. Why? Because when people are poor, when they don't have basic needs fulfilled in their life, they will only like a socialistic government where government can control the things and can distribute the things equally among everyone. This problem was there in India also. We had poverty at a very high scale, and that's why you will see, and it will be, this approach will be from 1900 to, it will be on peak during the 1970s. It will be at its peak. Even after independence, you will see that socialism will be more valued and will have more support in India. Why? Because in 1970s, you see that when Indira Gandhi will start her campaign, she will only give a small slogan, Garibi Hatao. Okay, that Nara of Garibi Hatao, that slogan, made her win the election. Why? Because poverty was so high that even if somebody saying Garibi Hatao, it was very sensitive and it was very much connecting to the masses. That's why. Okay. So you understand the difference here. Once we fulfill the necessities, then only we talk about luxury. But today you see that in India, we have so many malls, we have so many corporate offices, multinational industries and companies are there. We are now very much global in our approach, right? So that's why we are very brand conscious now. We are more towards luxury now because our necessities are very much fulfilled. Poverty is now not that higher. We have reduced the poverty level. That's why we are having people with more power, with more capacity to purchase. The purchasing power, the purchasing pocket is enlarged in India. That's why now we are more focusing towards a capitalist approach. Okay, so a change is coming, but it's right now on a very early stage, you can say, right? It is at a very early stage right now. But you will see that after 10 years or after 50 years, we will be more capitalist. As we follow a mixed economy, so it's easy for us to balance. And whenever we see something is needed, we balance accordingly. Fine. Now, in 1917, when the Russian Revolution, by after ending the monarchy, starting socialistic government, starting a centralized system with a 5-year planning, they, somehow proved to be an added advantage for home rule campaign, where it was shown that see monarchy is not fine, nobody could rule you, you should have your own governance, you should have your own parliament, you should have your own power. The home rule agitation was later joined by Motilal Nehru, father of Jawaharlal Nehru, then son Jawaharlal Nehru, Bhulabhai Desai, Chitranjan Das, K.M. Munshi, B. Chakravarti, Saifuddin Kichlu. Saifuddin Kichlu is the leader who will be, they imprisoned or missing during the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Okay, Madan Mohan Malviya, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Tej Bahadur Sapru, and Lala Lajpat Rai. Okay, so all these leaders, they started the agitation. They started raising their voice. They wanted home rule. Some of these leaders became heads of local branches of any Besant League because she had 200 branches. So, 200 branches means 200 leaders were needed to support each and every branch. Muhammad Ali Jinnah led the Bombay division, okay, with any Besant. Here you can see that how Muhammad Ali Jinnah used to be. You should remember this fact that Muhammad Ali Jinnah started his career with Congress. He used to support Congress initially. Later, when he joined Muslim League and when he saw that Muslim League is about Muslims and when he understood that he could get more leadership and control there, then he joined Muslim League and started demand for Pakistan. Okay, but initially he was a supporter of Congress. Many of the moderate congressmen who were disillusioned with the Congress inactivity and some members of Gokhale's Servants of India Society also joined agitation because they understood that they should have a one single base. But Anglo-Indians and most of the Muslims and non-Brahmins from the south did not join. Why? Because they felt home rule would mean the rule of the Hindu majority and two mainly by high castes. Okay, because they thought that somehow if the governance will be there in the hands of Indians, majority are Hindus, and Hindus they have more dominance of Brahmins, so the Brahman dominancy can be there. So many of the non-Brahman people coming from lower classes or castes, they didn't accept this idea. Anglo-Indians, of course, because they had a European connection, they had a British connection, English connection by blood, so that's why they never joined the Home Rule League. So this is important that in case if you are asked in exam that who didn't join Home Rule League and why, then you should have this statement clear in your mind. Okay, it's very important. Please read the line again and again. Whenever I make the star, there I make it just for you to read the line again, remember it, understand it, and ask doubts if you have any doubts. One, I can see a question is there by Shubhi Basik. Ma'am, please provide expected questions only for 2024. Okay, fine. Shubhi, I understood your doubt. First of all, I'll make a list of expected questions very soon. My team is working on it. Once we complete this book, which is going to be completed in this week only, once we do it, then we can come with few expected questions, practice questions, new questions of spectrum, and you'll get it very soon. Don't worry. Okay, I'll be there and I'll be making it. We will have a separate session for the same. Fine. Now let's come to the government's attitude. When these home rule league movements and agitations were going on in India, government responded very ruthlessly. Government wanted to imprison and divide the leaders anyhow. So the government came down with severe repression, especially in Madras, where the students were prohibited for attending the political meetings. Okay, so they were prohibited from attending the meetings, and from Madras they started the repression in a very severe manner. A case was instituted against Tilak, which was, however, uh, re-signed by the High Court later. But yes, a case was registered. Tilak was barred from entering Punjab and Delhi. In June 1917, Annie Besant and her associates, B.P. Wadia, George Arundale, they were arrested, and this invited a nationwide protest. In a dramatic gesture, Sir S. Subramaniam Iyer renounced his knighthood while Tilak advocated a program of passive resistance. So you can see passive resistance is what? When you are not directly attacking the government, but having uh, an active resistance, which is like not following the rules and the dominance of the British gestures anymore. Fine. Now, the repression only served to harden the attitude of agitators because they became more angry and strengthened their resolve to resist the government. Somehow, with this idea of Annie Besant and Tilak, people became more angry because they were now aware. So, when they saw their leaders getting imprisoned and fighting cases like this, now people, they were very much eager to get self rule, and it was somehow raised by Gandhiji. When Gandhiji will come, he will, hold this high level of energy and consolidate it in a very synergized manner. Montagu was the Secretary of State for India at that time, and we will talk about Montagu Chelmsford reform, which will come in 1919. But before Montagu Chelmsford reform, Montagu, the SOS, commented that Shiva cut his wife into 52 pieces, only to discover that he had 52 wives. It means what? It means that you guys are just wasting your time. Okay? You guys are just wasting your time, and you will see that ultimately you will get nothing. Fine. So don't just follow this mindset to have this resistance against the government, because by having so many branches again and again, if you feel like you'll be able to have the self rule, and if you'll be able to run the government, then that is just a myth. So this is what happens with the government of India when it interns Mrs. Besant. So that's the statement which shows how Britishers used to hate our leaders. Annie Besant was released in September 1917, and when she was released, she now understood that Gandhiji is in the picture now, because 1917 is the time when Gandhiji will be very active. But we will come to Gandhiji, but understand why this home rule movement faded out by 1919. First of all, 1919 is the date of Montagu Chelmsford reform also, where a bicameral legislation is going to be there. Division of power, unionist, federalist would be made, and you'll also see that we will have different kind of separations in the powers. Very long discussion is going to be there on the Montagu Chelmsford reform. But first, let's understand why this movement was faded. So the home rule agitation proved to be short lived. Why? Because by 1919 it had petered out. The reasons for the decline: first, there was lack of effective organization. Any Besant's League with 200 branches was not easy to be controlled and managed. Communal riots were witnessed during 1917 to 18. Moderates who had joined the Congress after Annie Besant's arrest were pacified by the talk of reform contained in Montagu's statement, August 1917, which held self government as the long term goal of the British rule in India, and Besant's release. So, somehow, when Besant came out, and when this understood that Montagu is now taking care of self rule as a goal, so yes, they may get something. So they were somehow very much pacified. Talk of passive resistance by extremists kept the moderates away from activity from September 1918 onwards. Why? Because again you will see that moderates had a very mild approach. They wanted to follow things in a very mild manner. The movement shifted the emphasis from the educated elite to the masses. So, this is something where you see that common public came here. But masses, the crowd will have no face. And it permanently deflected the movement from the course mapping by the moderates. Moderates who never understood the power of masses, they were like, why are we doing so? It created an organization link between town and the country, which is again very, very nice, which was to prove crucial in later years when the national movement entered its mass phase in true sense during Mahatma Gandhi. So it was not useful at that time, but it will be more useful during the true mass movement of Mahatma Gandhi. It was helpful in creating a generation of ardent nationalists, and many of them will join the politics later. It prepared the masses for the politics of Gandhian style, which is passive resistance. The August 1917 declaration of Montagu and Montfort reforms were influenced by the Home Rule agitation, which gave more powers and participations to Indian. So, Indian participation will increase, bicameral legislation will come, a dual system of government is going to be there. If we talk about the efforts of Tilak and Annie Besant towards the moderate extremist reunion at Lucknow 1916, it was very, very influential. Lucknow Pact 1916 revived the Congress as an effective instrument of Indian nationalism. The Home Rule movement lent a new dimension and a sense of urgency to the national movement. Somehow, a sense of urgency came. It is very, very important. See, sometimes you know that you need to study, but once you get the UPSC notification or once you receive the admit card, you get a sense of urgency that this is a high time now. I need to work. I need to, work harder and study more. So, this approach is very, very common in all of us. Sometimes, what we do, we delay the things, we take things lightly, we have a process of procrastination in our mind. We don't take things seriously until unless it becomes very, highly important or which becomes very crucial sometimes. So, a dead end, when the dead end is near, then people understand the sense of urgency. So, yes, it was very, very important. It gave a new dimension and a sense of urgency. Lucknow Pact between Congress and Muslim League was there, where Muslim League decided to have a same face with the Congress so that they could have their own demands understood and demanded at a approach where government can understand, because Congress and most Muslim League leaders, they also understood that somehow with their differential approach and with their differences, they won't be able to get anything. Government will only decline the demands and government will only partially accept things, which will lead to no happiness and no gain. So it was a significant development to take place at Lucknow. It was coming together of the Muslim League and Congress and the presentation of common demands by them to the government, which will create less confusion and a consolidated approach where it would ensure that Indians are together now and there would be no communal politics. So this happened at the time when Muslim League, now dominated by younger militant nationalists, which is very, very important. These younger militant nationalists, they were very secular in their behavior. Okay, was coming closer to the Congress objectives and turning increasingly anti-imperialist. So these people, these leaders, when they came together, a high level of energy was there when Lucknow Pact was signed. Okay, now why there was a change in the league's attitude? We will see. As I told you, the entire scenario of Turkey, right? So there were many reasons for the shift of the league's position. First, Britishers' refusal to help Turkey. Okay, Turkey was ruled by Khalifa, who was a Muslim leader who claimed religio-political leadership of all Muslims. So all Muslims in world used to worship Khalifa, and they thought that somehow Khalifa was like a main leader for them. So all the Muslims after the defeat of Turkey in the First World War were very, very unhappy. So Indian Muslims also became unhappy and they were upset about the approach and harsh and humiliating policies by the Britishers towards Khalifa, because Khalifa was not having more political powers and rights and claims now. So Muslims started Khilafat movement in India, and Gandhi ji used this Khilafat movement to make Hindus join it and made it a non-cooperation movement at a national level later. So just understand here, Britain refusal to help Turkey in its wars in the Balkans and with the Italy during 1911 angered the Muslims. So Muslims were already angry, and after the humiliating treaty, they became more angry once the world war will end. Annulment of partition of Bengal in 1911, Muslims will be very upset because they thought that the partition of Bengal is giving them a separate capital, Dhaka, but it was now taken away. So in 1911, the partition was cancelled. The refusal of the British government in India to set up a university at Aligarh with powers affiliated to colleges all over India also alienated some Muslims somehow. So Muslims were now very, very angry. Okay, Aligarh University has had no powers to affiliate colleges all over India. So you can understand that it will be having no sense in reality. So Muslims, however, they understood that, they are sidelined, they are marginalized. When they understood and realized it in the eyes of Britishers, they became very angry, and it led to the Lucknow Pact, and it led to the unification again. But you know how the divide and rule policy was. So Britishers will again, you know take care of something, and they will just deviate the feelings. If we talk about the nature of the pact, while the League agreed to present joint constitutional demands with Congress, the Congress accepted the Muslim League's position on separate electorate, which would continue till any one community demanded joint electorates. Okay, so they said, okay, fine. If you want separate electorate, we will give you. But if any community wants joint electorate, we will vote on the matter. And if it decides like that, we can go. The Muslims were also granted a fixed proportion of seats in the legislature at all India and provincial levels. The joint demands were there. So they had few joint demands. Okay, first, they wanted to come together with the separate electorate. They wanted to have a point of self rule. But you will see that these demands will influence the Montagu Chelmsford reform. These demands are not important, but it will influence the Montagu Chelmsford reform. And ultimately, with the Montagu Chelmsford reform, they will be somehow happy also, unhappy also. Unhappy why? Because a single date or time limit was not discussed in the Montagu Chelmsford reform, but happy because the separation of power and more Indian participation came with less powers to Indian. So, half of the executives was to be elected by the legislature. The executive as a whole was not be responsible to the legislature. It was a problem in the Montagu Chelmsford reform, which you will see later. The legislature could not remove the elected half of the executive, but since important matters like budget were dependent upon the approval of legislature, a constitutional deadlock was most likely to happen. This was the nature of executive legislature relationship that the Congress seemed to ask for in any scheme of post war constitutional reform. The Lucknow Pact demands were thus just a significantly expanded version of Montagu Chelmsford reform, and somehow these, objections are going to be there. So Indian leaders, both Congress leaders and Muslim League leaders, when they saw the Montagu Chelmsford reform, they had few objections. First of all, if you are giving a goal of self-rule to Indians, if Britishers are accepting it, if it is a long-term goal of Britishers, they could have specified a time frame or a deadline, but no specified time frame was given. The government alone was to decide the nature and the timing of advance towards a responsible government. Here, please understand that a responsible government is self-rule only, where Indians will have power transferred in their hands. So Indians were resentful that Britishers would decide what was good and what was bad for Indians. Indians wanted to be participating in the discussions for the decision making also. They were like, "Ki, if we want something, you should ask us. You should not decide among yourself that what we want. This is wrong. If you really want to have some reforms for the Indians, you should include Indians in the discussion. You should include us in the participation also." Right? So these demands were there and this approach was there. Fine. I hope you got the point. Now, in the next class, we will discuss how the Montagu Chelmsford reform was there and how Gandhiji will take the lead and the real mass movement, the beginning of real mass movement in India would be discussed tomorrow. I hope you liked this session. I hope you understood the Home Rule League movements and the post-war scenario. You have now got a point that Muslim anger base is created, which would be very useful and it would be utilized by Mahatma Gandhi to kill the communal violence and communal politics in India and unify everyone together. Right? So guys, now I'll come to your doubts. Abhishek, you have written that why BG Tilak was scared of Firoz Shah Mehta. Nobody was scared of anyone. See, first of all, we should not use harsh words. Second is, uh, if you write these kind of words and statements in the exam, you may lose marks in the eyes of examiner. Understand this, that sometimes leaders, they had their own way of thinking and they somehow understood that there is a seniority and dominance. Like initially Congress was dominated by the moderate leaders, so that dominance was there in the mind. A seniority approach, a dominant approach, a way of thinking things in a different way was always there. Even you will see once Gandhiji will be there, he will be very different in his attitude and sometimes it will be uh, in a very opposition manner against Subhash Chandra Bose. So you will see that Subhash Chandra Bose will come in Congress, will be very active, will become popular, then he will resign because somehow unwillingly he had to resign because of the approach of Gandhiji and he was not following and aligning it with that. So people don't gel up every time, their thoughts don't mix, even if they both are fine in their own ways. Okay, fine. So guys, we will end the session here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for joining the class. Please like, share the video. And if you have any doubts, please comment down. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.